Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, the rains have finally stopped. At least that's what they're telling us. And according to the weather report, we've got probably 8 to 10 days of no rain, which, trust me, around here we'll be glad for that. We haven't seen the sunshine in several days, and as you can see, the old creek, she's up quite a bit. It's worse west of here. We didn't get quite as much as some of the other parts of the state. I guess we were fortunate. Some of the places in the state had some pretty severe flooding, and several water rescues, and a lot of damage to structures and stuff. So we're blessed that we got a lot of rain, but not quite that much rain. Today I wanted to talk about this whole Russia-Ukraine war, World War III. I haven't touched on it in a while. And I did to kind of give a break a little bit because I think a lot of people were getting tired of it, and there are certain other channels that cover it quite extensively on a daily basis. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that it's not a serious deal or a threat or something that we should be concerned with, because in fact I think it's actually a really big deal. Trying to watching the news and seeing the reports and then trying to figure out what exactly is going on is kind of a challenge, because none of us fully really know what's going on. We're just making assumptions on what we hear. So it's hard to determine whether our leadership, our government leadership, really wants to be in a war with Russia, which is where I'm kind of leaning to. They want it. I think it would be a good thing for them. It would further their agenda. Or the other possibility is that they're making it so obvious that they're kind of calling Putin's bluff and hoping that he will realize that it wouldn't be a good idea to go to war with us and back down. So they're kind of rubbing it in his face of our involvement so far and how much we are actually involved in this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, which is a lot. We are really involved. I think I can't imagine us being much more involved than we are right now, other than actually just declaring war and sending armies over there. We've sent billions of dollars already. And as you all know, the president and many on both sides of the aisle, not just Democrats, are pushing for $33 billion to be sent to Ukraine. And a lot of that $33 billion is going to be weaponry. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And that's a massive amount. Just to kind of put that into perspective, the wall on our southern border that was wanting to be built by the previous administration, that everyone, at least the left, threw such a fit over, and the amount of money that was being spent over it, was going to be cost somewhere between 10 and 11 billion dollars. And we're sending 33 billion over to Ukraine. There's also this in the news that I saw yesterday. It's been reported by several news agencies that our own people, this isn't leaked, okay? So make sure you're aware of that. This isn't stuff that's being leaked to the press. This is open discussion, interviews, answering direct questions publicly that officials with the Pentagon and the White House have confirmed that our intelligence, U.S. military intelligence, has been involved in helping Ukraine take out some of Russia's generals, and our military intelligence absolutely was involved in helping Ukraine sink that big Russian destroyer, the one that was out there in the Black Sea. You know, I'm not pro-Russian at all, but if I were the Russians and I saw this, I don't know how else I could look at it than saying, we're at war with the United States. I mean, by any other accounts, that's how it would be taken. I mean, if Russia was doing this same thing with, say, Cuba or someone on our border, maybe Mexico, if we were in some kind of conflict with Mexico, and Russia was doing the same thing, we would absolutely say that Russia is at war with us and we are at war with them. So I do believe that our government is pushing for this. Like I said, the only other option is that they're hoping that they can be so blatantly, blazingly in their face of how our involvement is, that it will cause Russia to blink and back down and say, we're just, we're not going to follow through with this. The problem is I don't think that's normal, or that's within the Russian people and their agenda and what they're planning on doing. They have been very bold about what they will do, and how little patience they have left for our involvement in Ukraine. And I am not here to say who's the good guy or the bad guy. I've said actually all up until now, and still stand by this statement, that both are the bad guys. Okay, I don't believe there's any real good guy in this fight. The point though is that how close are we to some level of World War III? Because this is different. This is different than past conflicts that we've all been used to, and we've all read about, and we've all heard about, and some of you have even been involved in. This will be the first time in almost 80 years that we could be involved with a nation that's at least somewhat on par with us militarily. Maybe not quite as much, but certainly way more than any force that we have engaged in the last 50 or 60 years. And also, it will be the first nation that we've ever gone to war against that is a nuclear power nation, and that is actually threatening to use those weapons, those nuclear weapons, against us. It changes a lot, and this is all happening at what I would call a perfect storm. I've said this many times. In fact, just to show you, here's an article in Epic Times. Now, they're just talking about the whole agriculture, growing, food shortages here in America, but they're calling that a perfect storm. And I'm telling you, this whole scenario, everything that we're living in right now, is a perfect storm. It's almost like it's biblical. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some of you agree with me on that one, but it's almost like it is. When you look at everything that's happening, not just here in America, but globally, the health crisis that just doesn't seem to want to go away, supply chains, food, economy, the complete, absolute, and rapid destroying of our morality in the Western world. I mean, it's just like overnight. 3 years ago, the stuff that's being talked about and pushed today, if it happened 3 years ago, people would have just lost their minds and gone to jail. And now it's become commonplace. And then just the whole disruption in geopolitics, because it's certainly not just with Russia and us. It's everywhere. China and the Solomon Islands and Taiwan and Israel. It's happening all over. There is just disruption everywhere. And so when you look at the whole big picture that I talk about so often on this channel, you step back and you stop just looking at just that one little puzzle piece, and you step back and you see the bigger picture. There's a lot going on, and it's a perfect storm. I don't say all this, especially regarding our very possible engagement with Russia, to incite fear and panic. That I never ever want to do that. But I am telling you, I think it's something real and something to get really ready for. Up until now, throughout this whole thing from the point that Russia invaded Ukraine, there's been so many people, even preppers among us, that keep saying that there's just absolutely no way that this is going to spiral into a world war. And those people very well could be right. But as this drags on and as more and more happens, the odds of us getting to a point where just the wrong thing happens, just the wrong action is something that just pushes us over the edge, because that's it. We're getting closer and closer to the edge, which makes it easier and easier to push us over the edge into World War III. It's becoming more and more likely of a scenario, and I think it's a very real thing that we need to prepare for. Not just World War III, but the very possibility of a nuclear war, which most Americans have kind of forgotten about it. Folks my age and older, we grew up during the Cold War, and we've done all the little scenarios of protecting ourselves by hiding under desks and air raid sirens and all that kind of stuff. most Americans have forgotten that, and that could become once again a real reality, and not just the reality of the possibility of it, but the reality of it actually happening. There are measures that we need to be doing to prepare ourselves. And I, can very easily do a video at a later time on the specifics of those survival tactics that we can do to ensure our survivability through a World War III and possible nuclear war. But today, the point is that we have to wake up to this reality. I'm not saying it needs to be your top priority. I mean, for right now, we're still focusing on the food. It's growing season, and food is something that, regardless of what happens, that's going to be in jeopardy, and that's something you need to do. But don't put it on the back burner that what's going on with Russia and us and China is not a big deal. I think it is a big deal, and I think it's becoming more and more of a reality. Our government is being so brazen that just they're pushing this hard, and in a lot of ways it makes sense, because I think it would help them out, help their agenda out. If this all happens, I think a draft could very well happen. I was reading an article in the local news just a couple of days ago that the local recruiting offices are reporting some of the lowest recruiting numbers ever. And I would suspect that's probably something that's happening nationwide. Here in our area, it's a very, very patriotic area, and I know that a lot of people choose to serve in the military, and if they're having a hard time getting recruitments around here, I suspect it's that way everywhere, and it's because of the complete destruction of our military, or at least the attempt to. Good red-blooded blue-collar Americans that have generally made up the vast majority of the enlisted fighting force of our military, they're being pushed out, and they're being left out, and they don't want to be part of this woke military anymore. So it's going to get harder and harder, and if we find ourselves in a very large-scale global war, a draft could very well happen, because, well, we would need the manpower, or maybe the woman power, or the non-binary power, or whatever it is, to do this. It's going to affect the food supply too. It's going to affect the overall supply chain. As I've reported in the last several days, America doesn't have the manufacturing power that it once did. I mean, we still manufacture some things, but nothing on the level that we once did. And what we do manufacture, so much of those raw materials actually come from overseas. And so if we find ourselves in a big global war, especially with Russia and China, it could make it really hard for our supply chain to keep up, to the point that there would be the forcing of private companies to manufacture goods for the military, which would mean a lot less for you. What many of you learned about in your history books that happened during World War II, where people were really putting it out for the war effort, that could really happen again, and it could happen in a much worse place, because we are in a worse place than we were back then. And not only are we in a worse place than we were back in 1940 time period, we are also, as a people, as individuals, psychologically and physically, and in a worse place. The American people aren't as resilient as they once were. They're not as innovative, and they're not capable of surviving on their own. They don't know how to do that. Everything's on their phones and in their Starbucks and on their Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And you take that all away, the American people just can't handle it. So when I say we're in this perfect storm, or this recipe that is just setting ourselves up for something really bad, I think it's a real thing, and I think we need to take notice of it. So you just got to keep preparing. Look at ways to prepare for war also, World War III and nuclear war, because I don't think we can take that off the table. I don't think we can anymore, and we need to prepare in all ways, because there's so many things happening right now that it's just a better idea to just prepare for everything. And when you do that and not focus on a singular type event that you're trying to prepare for, then you have a much better level of preparedness. The world is not in a good place right now. That's not a doomsday or negative, falling sky is falling kind of comment. It's just the facts. It's true. We're not in a good place as Americans, and we're not in a good place in this world. And there's so much turmoil and destruction going on. I think we are. I've said this many times. We are watching the collapse of our civilization right before our eyes. We're in the midst of it. And any one of these things that we talk about on a regular basis could be that thing that tips us over the edge. And that's why we have to improve our self-sufficiency. Quit our dependency on government and the whole systems around us. Not just government, but everything. Secede from those systems and build your own independence, so that while it may be tough, it may not be what you're used to, but you're capable of surviving without it all if necessary. And do that on your own, but also make connections with others doing the same thing. And what you're doing is you're building coalitions of like-minded people, tribes, that together can pull together and survive just about anything. And that, in the end, is the best recipe for survival in this big storm that's brewing all around us. So folks, continue to get yourselves prepared, get your houses in order, prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and especially spiritually. Folks, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.